History is a viewpoint, a window, not just of the past, but a lesson and a warning of what may lay ahead. For the human condition is limited by its generational cycles, and too often the same theatre of war, political control, rivalry, deceit, and fight over scarce resources play out again and again. I am Henning Klovekorn, and I will bear it all, search for truth, uncover the hidden, and venture into the abyss of history with a yearning for discovery. Welcome to Klovekorn the Relic Hunter. Having landed in Frankfurt, 1 year's planning and preparation was about to realize itself. We will travel the width and length of this great nation and commence our search of what's left of the Third German Empire. Six 22 Ost.
Alright, so we've got the coordinates in here, bro. Looks like we're a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away. And that should put us right up by this west wall bunker in the middle of the Eiffel National Park.
Germany is an enchanting country. Driving for hours through its various state and tribal boundaries, one crosses hundreds of small towns and villages. Life, of course, goes on. The Germans quickly recovered after World War II and became an economic superpower within decades. By 1998, perhaps the ultimate economic victory occurred when the Germans gained control of Rolls-Royce. The Cold War, the puppetry to occupied powers, and eventual unification have kept the Germans very busy, which is why the relics of World War II are hardly noticed here, and why they fall into ruin and decay. Well, I'm sure you would agree with me that this is quite a dramatic backdrop. I'm at the West Wall. That's what the Germans call it. The English call it the Siegfried Line. I'm situated very close to the Belgian-German border in a place called Hürtgen, standing in the West Wall defensive network. Now, the West Wall was a defensive system built by Hitler between 1938 and 1940, and it comprised a massive military set of bunkers and pillboxes, defense fortifications, anti-tank barriers in a north-south axis of some 630 kilometers. It contained 18,000 bunker systems, and in this particular place, one of the largest battles of World War II took place. After many kilometers of exploration, the first sign of World War II infrastructure is found. A German water supply bunker.
So here we find ourselves in the Wasserbunker, or the water bunker. And as you can tell by the echoes in this massive chamber of water, this bunker provided the water for all of the bunkers within the network.
We move on. Having identified the water source bunker, we know that the other bunker systems must be in near vicinity. Venturing deep into the Hürtgenwald, one is met by three things: silence, an occasional walking path, and most of all,
a feeling of yesteryear, a dreary, unspoken dream, a place lost to the past. Most of the defensive bunkers are now gone, and finding the last remnants of the west wall is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. But persistence pays off, and we are met with some perfect examples of German Regelbau bunkers. Here young German men battled for their fatherland, the last official defensive fortification. These men knew that if the enemy were to surpass them here, battles here on in would need to occur on the streets, in makeshift fortifications. They knew a breach of the West Wall meant more than just a military defeat. It threatened the lives of their wives, mothers, and children back home. Standing here today, one gets a sense of this gravitas.
Of course, the West Wall wasn't utilised for the majority of the war. The Germans had found victory in France and other parts of Western Europe. But towards the end of the war, Hitler was anticipating an Allied invasion. So in 1944, he sent for the Reichsarbeitsdienst to fortify the West Wall. Hitler's prudence in the refortification efforts of the West Wall came just in time, because by the 6th of June 1944, the Allies had landed at Normandy. Already by August of 1944, they had reached the Siegfried Line, or the West Wall, here in Hürtgen. But they were to have some stiff resistance from the German network of bunkers and soldiers that were placed here. The Americans had over 120,000 soldiers hitting this part of the West Wall, whereas the Germans could only muster about 80,000. It's an often unheard fact of history that here in the Hürtgenwald of the West Wall, the Allied invasion force or liberation force was halted. The Allies lost 33,000 men in this spot alone. It was a tremendous defeat for the Allies. The West Wall did what it was designed to do, save Germany from invasion. And Generalfeldmarschall Walter Model, who was in charge of all of the troops here on the West Wall line, stated that it was an Allied defeat of the first magnitude.
The Battle of Hürtgenwald was followed by a number of defensive feats which gave Field Marshal Model the nickname the Master of Defence. He led the defeat of the British 1st Airborne Division using the understrength but veteran 9th SS Panzer Division and held the Nimwegen Bridge with the 10th SS Panzer Division. The Battle of the Bulge followed, but with inferior air support, a lack of ammunition and fuel, the final German defence, or Wacht am Rhein, could not hold the Allied advance.
Well, being this close to a German World War II bunker system means that, of course, we're going to do some relic hunting using Mine Lab metal detectors. And last time I showed you the GoFind 40. Well, this is its smaller cousin, the GoFind 20. As you can hear, it's eager to go and get going with relic hunting. So seeing that, according to the bunker position, the Allies would be advancing from this position, and the Germans are firing from this position, there's no questions that across this entire area there would be an enormous amount of World War II relics. Oh geez. And we can see that the whole ground is already brimming with objects. So let's have a look at this area. Get my little pinpointer going. Now when you're doing this, of course, you have to be quite cautious because of the potential for unexploded ordnance. It's under the rock, obviously. Ooh. That's magnificent, look at that.
With the spot of metal detecting done, we keep moving. The Hürtgenwald is a vast forest of some 88 square kilometers. With a tip-off from an old Wehrmacht veteran as to the location of a bunker still accessible, we hike across the elevations of this dense German defensive quarter.
So Simon, on the map,
Yeah.
the 10Ks just looked like this. Just like this.
Yeah.
But
That
in
map
real...
is deceiving.
But
It's
in
not a true representation of what's going on here.
No. It's like up and down, embankments, ravines,
Yeah.
lakes and rivers. My God. Well, after many kilometers of searching, we finally found an original untouched bunker system that the authorities are clearly not aware of because it hasn't been gated closed. Now, I'm going to enter this. Don't try this at home. Leave it to the professional relic hunters. Safety first. Having said that, these are very old brittle bunkers. Some of the concrete isn't what it should be. Some of the ceilings in some cases have collapsed, and having already put my head in there, I know that this bunker is entirely waterlogged. So it's a fun job and someone has to do it. This particular bunker is entirely waterlogged. In fact, I'm currently standing in half a foot of very cold German water. Then, remarkably, only a stone's throw away, we find this. A remarkably preserved German Regelbau bunker on the edge of the forest, entirely accessible and intact. So how did the Germans build 18,000 bunkers in under 2 years? Well, they came up with a system called Regelbau, or a standard work method. And this was classed into various types, type A, B, C, etc. So a type A Regelbau had a wall thickness of 3.5 meters, as opposed to a type B Regelbau, which had a wall thickness of 1.5 meters. And judging by this particular bunker system offhand, it must be a type B. Well, here we are in a Regelbau bunker. It's damp, it's wet, and it's cold. We see here the machine gun nest window, where the machine gunner would have stood watch and defended the bunker system.
And towards this end of the bunker are the sleeping quarters. We can still see the brackets there from the sleeping hammocks.
Now, as we can see from the facade of this bunker, it took an absolute hammering at the Battle of Hürtgenwald. The Allies were coming in strong, flanking this bunker, but the crew inside were reasonably safe.